It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
And it is a great day to be alive all across North America, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome in to You Better You Bet on the Westwood One Sports Network. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on this, the final day of 2025. Don't worry, doesn't mean we're going to coast into things here. We are going to get you ready to flip the calendar with all sorts of looks at the CFP. Week 18 of the NFL. We've got you covered. All of it. Happy to be with you here on the Westwood One Sports Network. Again, Chris Mack in for Nick Costos. Can't wait to spend the next few hours with each and every one of you. We appreciate you joining us, whether it's in that new Westwood One Sports Network app, inside your Odyssey app, over the air, of course on Sirius XM as well, channel 375. We appreciate you spending time with us on the final day of the year as you get ready for whatever nonsense you may get into tonight. Please do so responsibly. Whatever it may be, we appreciate you spending just a few minutes this morning here with us. And like I said, there's a lot to get into with the CFP. Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer of ESPN, going to join us in about 90 minutes. Plenty to get into week 18 of the NFL. Trey Essex, a two-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman, going to join us at the top of the third and final hour, 11 East, 8 Pacific, here on You Better You Bet. But why not take the biggest stories of the day and just launch right into them right off the top with the high five?
Five.
Watson, far side, and that is intercepted. Trayvon Diggs has his first since the ACL surgery.
That's Kevin Burkhardt on Fox calling a Trayvon Diggs interception. You remember when Trayvon Diggs was really, really good, right? When Trayvon Diggs was one of the best corners in the league, one of the most dynamic playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, we all remember that. It wasn't that long ago. So why do the Cowboys forget all about that? Oh, because he was difficult to deal with. Yeah, that can be tough. When you've got players who can be a little difficult to deal with, you know what you do? You manage the man. And this is the first sign to me that Brian Schottenheimer, granted, we know Schotty isn't calling all the shots, especially personnel-wise in Dallas, but this to me is the first sign that Brian Schottenheimer, as great an offensive mind as he may be, as good a play caller as he may be, right? He may not be a great head coach. What does that have to do with Trayvon Diggs not being around anymore? Well, Brian Schottenheimer wanted to be the hard-ass boss. Brian Schottenheimer, you got to fill out a request to get a day off from work. And I understand it's the NFL. It's not like work for you or I. But let's just put it in those terms. You give your boss a request for a day off from work, and you wait to hear back. Maybe you got to put it into a little HR system, or maybe it's simple where you work, the good old days, and you just fill out a piece of paper. Who knows how it works, but you ask the boss, hey, boss, can I get a day off? Can I leave early on Thursday? Because I got to cut out, I got family stuff going on. And Brian Schottenheimer said, no, you're just like the rest of us. You're going to fly all the way back to Dallas. And if you want to get on a plane then to fly all the way back to Maryland to spend the holidays with your family, you can do it then, Trayvon. Huh? What? When did Brian Schottenheimer become the hard-ass boss? This is not the way to go about things. The hard line in the sand is not always the way to manage every single player on your roster. Some coaches understand this. And look, we'll talk about Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh plenty later. But Mike Tomlin is a great example of a head coach who tactically and schematically leaves some things to be desired sometimes. But if nothing else, the man knows how to manage other men. I mean, hell, you got a great half decade, an elite Hall of Fame caliber half decade out of Antonio Looney Tunes Brown, for God's sake. Yeah, he wasn't great with challenge flags and doesn't always manage the clock well and doesn't always call timeouts at the best point. But we can go all over all that. But if one thing there is that Mike Tomlin knows how to do, it's how to manage a man. Brian Schottenheimer might be a great play caller, might be a great OC. Brian Schottenheimer not managing the man well. And now Trayvon Diggs is available to whatever team is bright enough to pick him up just in time for the playoffs. One of those teams who might be a little thin at corner going into January, they're going to have a chance to pick up, again, a guy who was one of the most dynamic corners in the game not too long ago because Brian Schottenheimer wanted to be just like your hard-ass boss who won't let you leave work early on a holiday. Shotty, be better. Next.
4.
The rules bees the rules. So if you put your name in the draft, I don't care if you're from Russia and you stay in the draft, you can't play college basketball. Well, that's only for American kids. What?
I love John Calipari. I really do. Full disclosure, I'm a Pittsburgh guy. A lot of yins, as we would say, know that. John Calipari, a Pittsburgh guy. A lot of yins know that too. Here's the problem. As intelligent a 7-minute rant as John Calipari laid out the other day about the ridiculousness of what has become the rules, being the rules, or the lack of the rules in this new Wild West version of D1 college athletics, I think he also has to understand that he helped build this beast. He did. He helped build the beast that makes the goal getting to the NBA and getting paid. And do you know why guys are coming over to Baylor from the G League or coming over from Europe, even after they've played professionally over there at times, and they're getting away with playing college ball? Because that's the goal. The goal is to set yourself up as best as possible to go make money in the association someday. If that means you got to leave the G League and go back to college, so be it. Because while the rules be the rules, Cal, the rules don't get enforced anymore. And if anybody should understand how getting around the rules at times can be of benefit, Cal, come on, let's be honest. It's me and you. Come on. It's called Pittsburgh Yinzers here. Let's be honest. You know how that works. I get it. You're a champion of the young high school player who is now being elbowed out of the room because of the lack of rules being the rules these days in the NCAA. And I celebrate you for being a champion of high school players who want to go on and do well for their family and go make gazillions of dollars in the association someday by playing for you in college at some point. But you have to understand that the calls are coming from inside the house, John. And you helped build this beast, and now you're fighting upstream against it. And guess what? You can appeal to the NCAA all you want, Cal. It's not going to do any good. You know why? Because the NCAA doesn't actually run the show anymore. Nobody runs the show because it's the Wild West of D1 college athletics in a system that you basically helped build. Next.
3.
Go in there and say, okay, you know what? It's been a great run. One of them may go in there and say, it's been a great run. Might be time to go try something else.
Adam Schefter on the Pat McAfee show just 2 days ago, talking about two most tenured coaches in the NFL who will meet Sunday night for the AFC North title, Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. It is win or go home for Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh in more ways than just the obvious one of you lose and your season is over and a massive disappointment for your fans, or win and go on to play probably the Texans, maybe the Bills in a wild card game at home in the first round of the NFL playoffs. It's win or go home in the way that each of these guys could decide, you know what, I've just had enough of being called into question every single day And I wouldn't blame either one of them if they decided to walk away after this year. Yes, it's true. Mike Tomlin will remain the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers until Mike Tomlin decides he doesn't want to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers anymore. And John Harbaugh is about that far behind him in how he writes his own story in Baltimore. Buddies with the owner, buddy with the GM. Only guy he isn't buddies with, apparently, is Lamar Jackson, which could be a problem. So whoever loses Sunday night, it's go home. Like, home. Not if you're John Harbaugh, get on a flight, go back to the facility, and start planning for 2026, guys. Let's go get them. No, if you're John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin and you lose Sunday night, you go home, you lay down in bed next to your wife, and you go, honey, I think it might be time for a fresh start somewhere else. We'll get into that more at the top of the next hour at 10 Eastern. Next.
2.
No, they're not going to give it again. They're going to give it to Tony. Tony scores a touchdown.
Sean McDonough on the call as the Miami Hurricanes beat the Texas A&M Aggies a couple weeks ago on ESPN and ABC. That was technically a touchdown pass. You know that? I know it was basically a handoff, but really Carson Beck let go of it. And so that counts as a touchdown pass for Carson Beck to Malachi Toney. I want you guys to remember that. Carson Beck had a touchdown pass. And look, we all get caught up. I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. We all get caught up in these narratives. Carson Beck is a big game loser. All he does is turn the ball over. I've said it many times over the last couple of years because we've seen him have some rough spots in big games. But this is not an offense nor a team, the Miami Hurricanes, that is built around Carson Beck going out and stealing the game, making massive plays, dropping dimes down the sideline in the last few minutes so Miami can go off to victory. No. Quite the opposite. This Miami Hurricanes team just squeaked into the CFP is built around defense. And they've shown you that they're more than happy, Mark Fletcher, to run you over if they have to. And that if it doesn't result in 6 at the end of the drive, that's okay. We'll give you the ball back. And guess what happens then? Reuben Bain Jr. and the rest of our defense walk out there. And you've got to put together a drive against them. And you've got to avoid the turnovers. Oh, our quarterback, you're the Miami Hurricanes, our quarterback is the big game turnover machine? Let's see how Julian Sayin handles things tonight in a big game with a ruthless defense raining down on him. Look, the Ohio State defense is just as good. The Ohio State defense is better than Miami's. It's the best in the country. Nobody's going to argue that Ohio State has the best defense in the country. At least I won't. But if Carson Beck is simply asked to be, shh, don't tell anybody I use this term. They might bleep me in some parts of the world. Carson Beck is a game manager. But if Carson Beck is a game manager tonight against Ohio State, doesn't make any dumb decisions with the football coming out of his hand, then Ohio State very well could be on upset alert. Go bet on it if you want. It's a 9.5-point spread. I don't know if there's enough points scored in this game for either team to cover 9.5. Miami could shock the world tonight, and it all boils down to Carson Beck not trying to do too much. And I believe in Carson Beck. Say it with me. U.S. soccer fans, you know how this goes. I believe in Carson. I believe in Carson Beck. I believe in Carson Beck. I believe in Carson Beck to not suck. We're not asking Carson Beck to go out and steal the game. If you're a Miami Hurricanes fan, all you're asking Carson Beck to do is go out there and manage it and drag it down into the mud the way you did a couple weekends ago in College Station if you have to. Just don't turn the ball over and let your defense torture Julian Sayin into maybe a couple of big game mistakes of his own. And if you do that, guess what? You got a chance to score late and maybe steal a game the same way you did against the Aggies in the first round of the CFP. More on this later with Adam Rittenberg of ESPN, who will join us just after 10:30 a.m. Eastern here on You Better You Bet. Finally, next.
1.
I think there's been a lot of quarterbacks that have been drafted high who have left the game and have been labeled a bust. And I think it's unfair because I do feel that organizations and coaching has failed quarterbacks more than quarterbacks have failed organizations.
That's Troy Aikman on ESPN's Monday Night Countdown in Atlanta the other night before the Falcons shocked the Rams. It's probably a completely separate conversation, to be honest, that we could have at some point today, and certainly before Week 18 takes place, and certainly before the playoffs get started. Are the Rams in trouble? But that's not what I want to talk about in this instance. I want to talk about just a massively important point that Troy Aikman made there. And it's that we're putting way too much on young quarterbacks in the NFL these days. We have completely screwed up the dynamic of expectations for quarterbacks in the NFL when they come into the league now. Look, again, I mentioned I'm a Yinzer. Dyed in the wool, bleed black and gold, all that kind of stuff, Steelers fan. So I know a lot of you may not be old enough to remember it, but Terry Bradshaw, as an example, oh my God, he's going to go back half a century? Yeah, I'm going to go back half a century. Terry Bradshaw was drafted in 1970. It took 5 years, 5 seasons, and nearly losing his job a couple of times before Terry Bradshaw, granted behind a great defense, but before Terry Bradshaw and the Pittsburgh Steelers won their first Super Bowl. And yes, that example is half a century old, but the NFL is littered over the years, especially most recently, with young quarterbacks who were thrust into a starting role, not given the necessary support as far as talent around them goes, as far as coaching and organizational support goes, and not brought along somewhat slowly to learn what it takes to be a winner as a QB1 in the NFL. We get caught up in the guys who come into the league and instantly have an impact and instantly start winning football games. It's great when that happens. And some guys can do it, but not all quarterbacks can. And here's the bad news for those of you who are fans of teams that don't have a quarterback and might be looking for one this offseason, particularly in the NFL draft. Those guys aren't around in bunches. They're just not. Tell me all you want to about Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. This is not a deep quarterback class, not particularly top-heavy either. So what are you going to do if you have a young quarterback who has shown you some things but still has a lot of warts on his resume after his first season or two? You're going to cut bait. You're going to cut and run, right? You're going to go find the next shiny toy. And then you're going to screw that guy up too, right? That's what the NFL does better than anything over the last 10 to 15 years. They ruin young quarterbacks. Because everybody thinks it's as simple as, well, we got a good play caller. We got a quarterbacks coach. We got an assistant quarterbacks coach. We got an assistant to the assistant quarterbacks coach. We're putting this guy in a situation to win. And you're telling me that it should happen like that? No, it shouldn't happen like that. NFL teams are not serving young quarterbacks well, and we've arrived at a quarterback crisis because of it in the NFL, and it's not getting better sooner rather than later. Those the 5 biggest stories I want to address today here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on the Westwood One Sports Network. As mentioned, we're going to talk plenty of Week 18 and look ahead to the NFL playoffs. Trey Essex, 2-time Super Bowl champ, going to join us at the beginning of the third and final hour, right around 11 a.m. Eastern. Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer for ESPN, is going to join us in about an hour and 15 minutes or so to give us the lay of the land on all 4 CFP quarterfinals being played in the next 24 to 36 hours or so, starting with the big one tonight between Miami and Ohio State. We'll get into all of it, and happy to have you along for the ride Looking forward to hearing from you. Feedback always welcome on our social media channels. Just search for the Westwood One Sports Network. Look for You Better You Bet. We'll take everything you got, all your hot takes, a few more from me as well. Tell you what kind of bets we may have in line as well throughout the day. We'll jump into a time machine just a little bit as well, a little bit later with this weekend in hindsight. I know it's not a weekend technically, but it feels like a nice long weekend. All of it on the way. Coming up, though, why is this Trayvon Diggs Cowboys divorce a great example of why great play callers don't always make great head coaches? That next, right here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on the Westwood One Sports Network.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Sometimes great play callers or offensive minds don't make the best head coaches. I'll explain in just a second. Welcome back into You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today. Happy New Year to you as we turn the page from 2025 to 2026 in 20 minutes or so. A little less than that, actually, about 15 minutes. I'll tell you why one guy has built a monster that he's now trying to defeat himself. I may even throw in a Stranger Things reference, despite the fact, don't tell anybody, I've never watched a single second of the show. I know. That's especially this time of year when everybody's going nuts for it. Why would I admit something like that? Because I'm a loser who just watches sports. Sorry. Anyway, great play callers don't always make great head coaches. And I'll tell you why. Because they've been stuck in the world of X's and O's for so long that they haven't had to manage personalities. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. And I want to lay the groundwork for this conversation that we mentioned off the top of the show. You've heard about it in the last 24 hours. The Dallas Cowboys have placed Trayvon Diggs on waivers. Assuming he clears, he'll be available to absolutely anybody in the NFL that wants to pick him up at the low cost of around $500,000. That's it. That's all. For an all-pro level corner. At least he was the most dynamic playmaking corner in the league before that ACL injury a couple years ago. Now, it's well known, I think, by most football fans that a lot of players, you could probably say this for, pitchers who undergo Tommy John in baseball as well, or any major injury and surgery, that the subsequent rehab and comeback from that injury can take much longer than just the 9 to 12 months, for example, in the case of an ACL, that it takes to actually get back on the field. A lot of times we see guys take almost a full calendar year and more to really start to look like themselves again after a major injury. And so Trayvon Diggs, at least in the Cowboys' estimation, maybe hadn't come all the way back from that. They want to blame it on the way he rehabbed these injuries and the fact that while he was coming back from one of these injuries, he also dropped a TV on his head or a TV mount. That part of the story is unclear. But anyway, Trayvon Diggs is no longer a Dallas Cowboy. They will tell you because he was difficult to deal with over the last year or so. Maybe because his new agent, David Mulligetta, is also Micah Parsons' agent, and he's close with Micah. He became a little more difficult over the last 4 months or so as the Parsons saga played out and then reached its conclusion with Micah getting traded to Green Bay. Whatever the case may be, the Dallas Cowboys are going to try to spin this as Trayvon Diggs was a headache and wasn't doing what they wanted him to do. And there are facts laid out, at least according to the story in the Dallas Morning News today from Calvin Watkins, that he was not working within the defense. He wanted to play press man because he felt that was his strength. They'd go zone. He wouldn't. He put himself out there on an island. There's a specific incident recalled in where Rome Odunze beat him off the line as Diggs slipped trying to play press man, and Odunze beat him for a big play. 35-yard touchdown catch. There are lots of facts laid out in this story. And this is by no means to take a shot at Calvin, who wrote the story, Calvin Watkins for the Dallas Morning News, or anyone else who is going to write the story from the Cowboys' perspective. I totally understand it's your job to write the story with the facts presented to you. Maybe we don't have all the facts from Trayvon Diggs' side. And until we get all those, I'll still wait and pump the brakes on rendering a full judgment on exactly how this divorce happened. But I will tell you this. When there is a divorce between a quote-unquote difficult player, as the Cowboys are labeling Trayvon Diggs, and an organization, there better have been a lot of hard work to try and reach some sort of amicable resolution to keep the guy in the building. I made this comparison earlier, and you can call it apples to oranges if you want, because one guy is way out there on an island in comparison to where Trayvon Diggs is. But Mike Tomlin, for years in Pittsburgh, managed Antonio Brown, who at first was just sort of a goofy, happy-go-lucky guy. He called himself Ronald Ocean in the locker room, and it was fun because Antonio Brown was the best wide receiver in the league for 3, 4, maybe 5 years in a row. Was putting together a Hall of Fame resume, even if the Steelers weren't doing what they were supposed to do in the playoffs. Then he became more than mercurial. Antonio Brown started to really fly off the handle and really started to get difficult to deal with when the Steelers brought in a young Juju Smith-Schuster who started to steal some of the limelight. And Mike Tomlin did his best over those years, even when it got sticky, even when it got difficult, to manage the man. Mike Tomlin may not manage challenge flags well. Mike Tomlin may not manage timeouts well. Mike Tomlin may not manage offensive game plans all that well. After all, he is a defensive-minded head coach, and his OC is Arthur Smith. We'll get to the Steelers and the Ravens and all that just a little bit later in about 30 minutes here at the top of the hour. The point I make about Mike Tomlin and Antonio Brown is more to call into contrast the fact that you got to be a manager of men. And I really question if Brian Schottenheimer is capable of doing that. There are great minds out there, offensive and defensive, who have become head coaches and I think are showing that they can manage the man. They can manage the roster and the personnel. You know, I'll use Kevin O'Connell as an example. The Vikings have been a massive disappointment this year. A lot of that having to do with the young quarterback who probably isn't nearly as good as anyone thinks he is in J.J. McCarthy. And that's a separate conversation we'll also get back into a little bit later. Young quarterbacks being flung into the fire. But I think O'Connell manages the men in his room pretty well. Sean McVay, a great example. Got the job in L.A. by being a great offensive mind, but he has managed some big egos over the years and has hardware to prove it. You have to be able to do both. Dan Campbell made his bones as an assistant coach, a play caller at times, manages men very well. Gets that this is more than just one facet of, I've got to have the X's and O's together. I don't know if Brian Schottenheimer has that together. And look, there are other elements in Dallas. What an obtuse way to refer to Jerry Jones and the Jones family. Other elements. Look, you got to work for Jerry, okay? So it makes it difficult because Jerry's going to stick his nose in. So maybe Brian Schottenheimer didn't have much of a say in this, and it was all Jerry. But I still think it calls into contrast the fact that we have young head coaches or inexperienced head coaches who made their reputations as play callers, as schemers, as great minds, who might not yet have a grasp on how you manage the man. And the one example I will cite is someone who I think has totally understood how to handle both aspects of this very quickly. Ben Johnson. That's why I actually really like the Bears. You want to bet? You want to bet this morning? Listen to this. Bears are 9-1 to win the NFC. I know. Our board op Kenny is already doing cartwheels as soon as I mentioned the Bears at 9-1 to win the NFC. But Ben Johnson has come in and he has managed who? Caleb Williams. Now, look, Matt Eberflus may have had no idea what he was doing. And maybe that makes it all that more obvious that Ben Johnson does have some idea of what he's doing. I think he's got more than some idea. He gets how to handle Caleb. He gets how to handle the entire team. Ben Johnson has taken the Chicago Bears from, what are we talking about? A decades-long laughingstock? The last time anybody remembered the Bears doing anything was Jay Cutler. And now he's got them, with a little bit of help, it's close to the 1 seed in the NFC. At the very least, they're going to get home playoff games. Maybe against a team like the Rams, who we know don't play well outside and are backsliding their way into the playoffs. You've got to be more than just a play caller. you've got to understand how to handle the men. And look, there are head coaches out there who I think are good at handling the men in their locker room, good at the motivational tactics, good at the mental games, all of that. Again, I'll cite Tomlin. I think Sean McDermott, coincidentally, probably not. Sean McDermott, a college teammate of Mike Tomlin's at William & Mary many years ago, who get that part of it. They get the mental game. They get the motivational game, even if they screw up tactically from time to time. And I think if you can't put those two parts together as a head coach in the modern day NFL, then it's okay to just be a great OC or DC. It's okay to be a great coordinator. And maybe that's your ceiling. But this, again, feeds into this whole dynamic of looking to catch the quick fix, so to speak, at the NFL level. We want to get the young quarterback. We want to get the hot young play caller. We're going to put them together. Oh, it's going to be magic. Well, no, not always. And no one would argue that Brian Schottenheimer's offense was fantastic this year, despite coming into the year without any obvious option in the backfield. Dak Prescott, great example of a quarterback who doesn't have to be drafted in the first round to be very good. But George Pickens crashed out towards the end of the year. How did Schotty handle that? Did he even try to handle that? Mike Tomlin handled that for a couple of years, as long as he could, before he said, I can't do it no more. So you have to recognize when it's just as much about managing the man and the men in the room as it is managing the X's and O's. You may be the best in the world on a whiteboard. If you can't get inside the gray matter between a dude's ears and make sure he's plugged into doing what's necessary, I don't care how you got to do it, then you're never going to quite reach that next level. And Ben Johnson is a great example of a guy who I think has hit it right on the button, right from the get-go. That's why I really like the Bears to go on a run here, because both conferences are wide open. And if there's a team that could take advantage of wide open conferences, the Bears on the NFC side, with a home game or two, they could be that team. Coming up next, a guy I absolutely love has some really great ideas. And he laid them all out for us the other day. But I don't think he realizes he's actually fighting a monster of his own creation. That's next. It's You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos here on Westwood One Sports.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
The rules be's the rules. So if you put your name in the draft, I don't care if you're from Russia and you stay in the draft, you can't play college basketball. Well, that's only for American kids. What?
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome to the Upside Down, Coach Cal. You're fighting a Demogorgon you helped create. Did I make that Stranger Things reference correctly? Is that how it works? There's an interdimensional monster that sneaks into town and tries to kill everybody, or something, has like a flower head or something. I don't know. I've never watched a second of the show. We'll get into Calipari in just a second, because as much as I love Coach Cal, I think he has to understand he's fighting a beast that he helped create. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos this morning here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. We appreciate you joining us wherever you may be in the world. You can always get us inside your Odyssey app, also the new Westwood One Sports app on Sirius XM, channel 375. The best place to be throughout the holidays for absolutely everything going on as we flip the page from 2025 to 2026. Excited to be a part in some small way of this new network, keeping you informed on everything that's going on. We'll get into the CFP momentarily. Adam Rittenberg is going to join us in less than an hour, senior college football writer for ESPN, to talk about each of those 4 CFP quarterfinal games. I'll tell you why I believe in one quarterback that I don't think anybody else does before we get Adam on in the next hour. In the third and final hour, I think we've arrived at a quarterback crisis in the NFL, and it's not getting better anytime soon. Plus, we'll talk to 2-time Super Bowl champ Trey Essex about everything to look for in Week 18. In particular, a winner-go-home position in Pittsburgh on Sunday night. Speaking of Pittsburgh, John Calipari is a Pittsburgh guy. I'm sure he'll be watching his Steelers on Sunday night. But right now, he's preoccupied, as you heard him coming back from break, with the seemingly upside-down nature of the rules, which be the rules, or the lack thereof in college basketball. We don't even know who can play college basketball anymore, right? You can go to the G League. You could be a 29-year-old from Europe. Anything goes in the NCAA these days. It is the wild, wild west. And I hate to break it to John, because I actually love John Calipari. I do. I actually think he's a great dude. But I hate to tell him, he helped build this monster, this machine that makes the point of everything, whether it's AAU, whether it's going to Europe, whether it's poaching the best players from small schools and mid-majors to bring into your power conference program, whether it's just straight up going the old-fashioned way and going from high school to college, playing a couple years, and then going pro. The goal is always the same, and it should be the same. Let's be clear about this. The goal should be the same for every single player. Go as far as your talent can take you, and go make some money if you can. Now, the NCAA has made things difficult because they're not stopping. For example, the idea of former NBA draft pick James Nagy, who played in the G League, going to Baylor. Wait, he played in the G League. What are we doing? He's going to college now? Well, this is what happens when you have the wild, wild west. The wild, wild west nature of college athletics, which I have no problem with, by the way. Get paid while you're making money for the university that you're playing sports for. By all means, you should get some of what they're making because of your efforts. Totally okay with that. But you have to understand that when that Pandora's box was opened, you weren't going to close it. The worms are out of the can. There's no getting them back in. And so the idea that we're going to get back to some semblance of order thanks to the NCAA, come on. Is there a more useless governing body in sports than the NCAA? So while I appreciate Coach Cal's appeals, 6.5, 7-minute long appeals the other day to the NCAA to put in force some common sense rules. Like, hey, you can only transfer twice, and it's got to be when there was a coaching change. And the second time, you got to sit out for a year. He wants to dial it back to the system where, let's be honest, he thrived. Tom Izzo wants to dial it back to the system where he thrived. Mark Few wants to dial it back. And look, nobody hates change more than somebody that has found a formula for success. And all of a sudden, you flip the script on them and you go, nope. Got to learn a new way to do it. Old dogs, new tricks, all that. But I would think that Calipari, Izzo, Few, all seem to be handling this new world just fine. And so this odd loophole has been opened up where, yeah, you can go play in the G League for a year if you want. 2, doesn't matter. You got drafted? Oh, yeah, go back to college. What's interesting is we have other sports, other major professional sports leagues in North America, the NHL and Major League Baseball, to be specific, where guys get drafted. And they stay in school, and they continue to play in many cases, while a team holds their rights. I think that's a fairly similar comp to what we've got with James Nagy. Getting drafted, going to play in the G League. Yes, I understand it's not apples to apples, but he went, he played, he's still got college eligibility, so now he's going to college. He's traveling whatever path he has to try and maximize his earning potential, which I would think John Calipari would embrace. But it requires this new set of operating procedures. And when you're the old dog, sorry, Cal, I'm not trying to call you old, but more of a silver fox these days. At least that's what the ladies tell me. Is Calipari attractive to women? Doesn't matter. I'm not trying to call you old, Cal. That went off on a tangent. But you're an old dog learning new tricks. And that's uncomfortable. I get it. Izzo, you've been around forever. You don't want to figure out what? I can go get guys from the G League now? I don't have enough people on staff to recruit all these guys. How am I supposed to handle this? I get it. It's uncomfortable. It's what happens when there's change. And when the Pandora's box of change was opened several years ago to allow the wild, wild west of D1 college athletics to exist as it currently does, you had to understand that this was going to happen. Maybe you didn't foresee or imagine that this specific instance would happen. A guy got drafted, went to the G League, and now is going back to college. But come on. Anything can happen now. And you have to be prepared for that, Cal. As much as I love the guy, he's built the machine where every player is out to go get his and set up his family for future generations. And now he's not happy that the system allows players to do whatever's possible to go out and make as much money to set up future generations. Cal, really? You're better than that. You're smarter than that. You're arguing against the machine that you helped build. You can't put it back together now. It's irrevocably broken. D1 college athletics. You got to just deal with the pieces that are left over. Interesting numbers have come out on prospective wildcard matchups, and I do want to look at a couple of them that jump off the page at you. Plus, coming up next, Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. We know they are coaching for more than just the AFC North title on Sunday night. It's win or go home in a multitude of ways, I think, for each of them. That's next here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
ready? It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
It is win or go home for a couple of guys on Sunday night in more ways than just the obvious one. We'll get into that in just a moment here on You Better You Bet. Happy New Year to you. I know we're still anywhere from 14 to 17 hours away from 2026, depending on where you are in the beautiful United States of America or anywhere in North America. Yes, we're on Sirius XM. Westwood One Sports is channel 375. Also, inside that new Westwood One Sports app. Go download it today. And your Odyssey app. It's free. AUDACY. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today, getting you ready for the CFP with Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer of ESPN, in 35 minutes from now. Top of the hour, exactly 59 minutes from now. Two-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman Trey Essex will join me, and he'll tell us what to look for in Week 18 in some of these high-leverage spots. And then, of course, rolling into Wild Card weekend as well, which, before I get to Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, I did want to bring up some of these look-ahead lines on prospective Wild Card matchups that are out there in some spots. And the ones that jumped out, look, I laid out a great case, I thought anyway, for Ben Johnson and the Bears to go on a little bit of a run this January because it's all coming together for them at the right time. But how about the Bears right now? If they hosted the Rams in the wild card round, they're on the board in some spots as 4.5-point home dogs. How about being dogs at home, granted just 1.5, to the Packers? If that happens to be, and that I think is the more likely matchup, but if that happens to be the wild card matchup, interesting lines there. The biggest line on the board for all of these prospective, I called it wild card weekend. My God, I'm surprised I haven't been slapped with a copyright infringement lawsuit already. Super wild card weekend. Sorry, Mr. Goodell. Super wild card weekend. Biggest line right now would be the Rams at the Panthers. LA would be favored by 9.5. So, yeah, I mean, there are unsurprising numbers out there. I don't know. The Bills only having to lay 1.5 if they go to Jacksonville in the wild card round doesn't sound like enough to me. Some other interesting ones as well. We'll keep an eye on those, obviously, here on You Better You Bet as we accelerate through Week 18 and towards Super, got it right that time, Wild Card Weekend. As mentioned off the top, it is win or go home for Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. We know that, right? Whoever wins Sunday night wins the AFC North title, gets the 4 seed in the AFC playoffs, probably hosts the Texans a week after that, which, by the way, I should look up those lines for you since I'm talking about prospective wild card lines. The Steelers would be 3.5-point home dogs to the Texans if that ended up being the matchup on Super Wild Card Weekend. The Ravens would be 1.5-point home favorites over the Texans. So you're telling me there's a 5-point difference between the Ravens and the Texans, or excuse me, the Ravens and the Steelers. But I guess you consider the fact that Baltimore is traveling to Pittsburgh this weekend. That's where you end up with just 3.5 on the board right now for that game, in which the Ravens are favored to beat the Steelers and win the AFC North, despite a 1-5 start, despite Lamar Jackson missing significant time down the stretch. It would save John Harbaugh's job, no doubt. Now, I don't know what the dynamic would be like going into the offseason in Baltimore. I know there are a lot of Ravens fans that are convinced that anything short of a trip to the Super Bowl, it's still time for Harbaugh to go. He's past his expiration date, right? And the choice may be very clear for Steve Bisciotti and the Ravens Brain Trust. The choice may be, do you keep the MVP caliber quarterback in Lamar Jackson, or who, by the way, has like a $75 million cap hit the next 2 years. So it wouldn't exactly be easy to get rid of him anyway. Or do you stick with the 60-something-year-old head coach who's been around for 2 decades? I don't know about you. My choice would be simple in that case. I'd choose the quarterback, and I'd find myself a new head coach. And there are a lot of people in Baltimore that would love to see it play out that way. It may, as early as Monday morning, we may get that notice. John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens have decided to mutually part ways. A conscious uncoupling. A little glint in Gwyneth Paltrow's eye somewhere. It's entirely possible. That's how it goes down after Sunday night's game. But if you're like me, and I live about, let me do the math, 13 miles from Heinz Field. I'll never call it Acrisure Stadium. It's Heinz Field. You don't expect the Steelers to actually beat the Ravens. The Steelers' run defense that has looked absolutely atrocious at times this year against King Henry, assuming the Ravens remember to use him as they did this past Saturday at Lambeau. Aaron Rodgers with no DK Metcalf, no Darnell Washington. He's got Adam Thielen and MVS. Oh, that worked well last weekend in Cleveland. Scotty Miller. How in the hell do the Steelers beat the Ravens? I don't know, to be honest. Short of forcing Lamar Jackson, assuming he plays, which isn't a given either, short of forcing Lamar Jackson into multiple turnovers, which the Steelers have done in the past. I want to say Lamar is 3-6 in his 9 starts against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they have been a bit of kryptonite for him in the past. So you're saying there's a chance? Yeah, I guess there is. But I think more likely the outcome Sunday night involves Mike Tomlin losing another massive game in a do-or-die situation. And at home, no less. To a division rival, no less. And the team that steamrolled them in the playoffs last year after they collapsed down the stretch, no less. And so the Pittsburgh Steelers will be right back where they were a year ago. Aging quarterback. Not sure about whether he'll be back or not. Defense that can't stop the run to save their lives. No wide receiver, too. Where do they go from there? And you can put the blame on general manager Omar Khan if you want. Khan has actually done, in my opinion, a fairly crafty job of trying to build things up for the future as well as the present. I think if you look at draft value right now, the Steelers are 4th on the board in prospective draft value that they possess due to the number of picks that they've built up over the last year or so for a draft that, not coincidentally, is being held in their backyard this April. But that aside, Mike Tomlin also has great amount of say in the personnel department in Pittsburgh. So he's very much to blame for the Steelers not reaching a Super Bowl in over a decade. Oh, by the way, it's also been 13 years since John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens reached a Super Bowl. So here we are talking about 2 legendary coaches, each with hardware, each looked upon as, well, if he were available, he'd have a job tomorrow, possibly being given the Andy Reid boot as he was out of Philadelphia years ago. The catch, it won't be phrased that way. Both of these guys have the opportunity to dictate their own situation. Adam Schefter, in fact, broke it down just the other day on the Pat McAfee show.
I think these guys will go in there and say, okay, you know what? It's been a great run. One of them may go in there and say, it's been a great run. Might be time to go try something else.
Yeah, and something else for John Harbaugh may be just a front office position in Baltimore. A nice, soft, cushy landing, a golden parachute of sorts. For Mike Tomlin, we know he'd be able to have almost any head coaching job he wanted, but a lot of those openings are with teams and organizations that don't have their together. And so he may wait for a better opportunity. May sit out a year. May do some TV. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. Guy is good with words. And so that's a distinct possibility, I think. Because Mike Tomlin, in particular, is never going to be fired by Art Rooney II and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not going to happen. It's not. You're never, ever, in the history of our lives, going to see a press release that says, Pittsburgh Steelers chairman Art Rooney II today dismissed Mike Tomlin as head coach. Never going to happen. No. What you'll get is the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin have decided to mutually part ways. They will gloss it over as smoothly as possible because they don't want to be a franchise that fired a head coach. And Mike Tomlin may just decide to take that exit ramp following what would be a brutal loss. They had the division in the palm of their hands with a trip to Cleveland. And yes, they were without DK Metcalf. Yes, they were without TJ Watt. I get it. That's like $50 million worth of football players right there. Arguably your biggest impact player on each side of the ball. But it's the Browns, guys. And they laid an egg in Cleveland. And so the heat that had been turned all the way up on Mike Tomlin's seat by the fans chanting, "Fire Tomlin," just a month ago during the second half of an ugly loss at home to the Buffalo Bills, will immediately get ratcheted back up. And he may be tired of it. And I'll tell you, lots of Steelers fans are tired of it. There would be no better time for a divorce than right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin. With 10 draft picks, I think it is, at least that many going into next year's draft, with this possibly being Aaron Rodgers' last game in the NFL Sunday night, if the Pittsburgh Steelers lose to the Baltimore Ravens, it would make all the sense in the world for Mike Tomlin to wake up Monday morning, walk into Steelers headquarters on the south side of Pittsburgh, and say, "It's been a great ride. I'm done." And for Aaron Rodgers to say, "It's been a great ride, but I'm done." And then the Steelers finally get their opportunity to start a rebuild that for so long they have avoided, and that, again, they've tried to manage just a little bit around the idea of still competing. It is win or go home in more ways than just one this Sunday night for John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Coming up next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports, with all apologies to 80s hair metal greats Poison. God, I'm dating myself, aren't I? One CFP quarterback has given us something to believe in. I'll stop singing and I'll tell you exactly who I'm talking about next.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Tom Brenneman on the AACC on the CW with Carson Beck's touchdown pass there. And I believe in Carson Beck. I'll explain why. And I've got some pretty detailed reasons behind this. This isn't just, oh, no, he doesn't stink in big games. No, there's actually reasoning and logic behind how the Miami Hurricanes could possibly shock the hell out of Ohio State tonight in the Cotton Bowl, in the CFP quarterfinals. Get into that in just 1 second. Here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today. Happy to be with you as we flip the page from 2025 to 2026 and welcome all of you into Westwood One Sports, wherever you may be listening across North America, whether it's over the air, whether it's inside your Odyssey app, the Westwood One Sports app, Sirius XM Channel 375. We appreciate each and every single one of you. Thanks for spending some time with us as you get ready to do whatever nonsensical things you may do to ring in the new year tonight. Please celebrate responsibly. I have to say that. Otherwise, I have to. So you may have an idea after the Poison reference I made going into the break. Poison, the great 80s hair metal band. Bret Michaels, Pittsburgh area native. You know I love to shout out my Yinzers. That I grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? So I'm also, I just get absolutely battered by nostalgia. No one loves to just soak in the shower of nostalgia more than I. And I saw a post over the weekend, I want to say it was. All days are nameless gray faces at this point. Nameless gray days between Christmas and New Year's. It was a couple days ago. I saw a post on Instagram, I believe it was. And they must know that I am just a sucker for nostalgia. Apparently, Zubaz are making a comeback. If you grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, you remember Zubaz. The zebra print pants and hoodies and shirts. There's an entire zebra print line of clothing, but in your favorite NFL team's colors. So somewhere there is a picture of me, a picture of me in like a Greg Lloyd jersey with hideous black and gold Zubaz pants on. I'm pretty satisfied in the fact that that has never seen the light of day outside of maybe a box or a photo album somewhere in my mother's basement. But I saw that Zubaz is making a comeback. Really? Miami Hurricanes were huge in the Zubaz era. I remember lots of kids at school had the starter jackets, the Miami Hurricanes ones. Alabama was really big at the time, too. Michigan, UNC, those starter pullover jackets. Everything that was old is new again at some point. And it might be the same for Miami Hurricanes football. And you're looking at it like, please, Chris, come on. They're 9.5-point dogs to Ohio State for a reason. Ohio State is the best, all-around, most complete team in the country. And everybody outside of Indiana probably believes that. We're probably right. But I do think that there is an opportunity for the Miami Hurricanes to shock the world tonight. And at the very least, put one hell of an ungodly scare into Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. How does that happen? It happens with the quarterback position. I swear I am not on any sort of narcotics or hallucinogens, at least not this early in the morning. No, I'm serious. Carson Beck could be the key to the Miami Hurricanes beating the Ohio State Buckeyes. Because I believe in Carson. I believe in Carson Beck. I believe in Carson Beck. Not necessarily to take over the game. Let's not get crazy. But I believe in Carson Beck to not be the guy that throws the game away. Because he hasn't been. He hasn't been over the last 5 to 6 weeks. In fact, I did some research. I'm going to pull a muscle and pat myself on the back here. But I did some statistical research. when they told me I was going to get to fill in for Nick Costos on You Better You Bet today, I said, Chris, pull out the calculator. And I went back and looked at the last 5 games for each of the 8 quarterbacks remaining in the college football playoff. I looked at completion percentage, looked at touchdown to interception ratio, looked at yards per attempt, and quarterback rating, of course. I still like quarterback rating. I know there are quants out there, stat geeks and nerds who are like, quarterback rating? That's prehistoric. I need QBR or whatever. No, quarterback rating takes everything, rolls it up into one, gives you a good general number about how a passer is performing. The number's usually a little out of whack in college football. The numbers get big as compared to the NFL, but I'm fine with that. It still gives you an idea of relative performance between a set of quarterbacks, I should say. So I went and looked those numbers up. Do you know which quarterback has the best completion percentage of these 8 remaining quarterbacks over their last 5 games? Carson Beck. Do you know which quarterback has the best touchdown to interception ratio of these 8 quarterbacks remaining in the CFP? Carson Beck. Do you know, this isn't much of a reach now, given I've given you the other 2 numbers, who has the best quarterback rating of the 8 remaining quarterbacks in the CFP? I believe in Carson Beck. I believe in Carson Beck. And look, the Texas A&M game was ugly. It was hideous. It was bad football, I'll be honest. Maybe if you're a lover of defense, you got your rocks off just a little bit by watching that game. I was more so cringing and looking sort of through my fingers like a kid at a horror movie at what was going on in front of us. Nonetheless, how many times did you see Carson Beck really screw up in that game? You didn't. You know how many picks Carson Beck has thrown in the last 5 games? 1. How many touchdowns? 12. There is not a quarterback playing better going into the CFP quarterfinals than Carson Beck. And I know we have this narrative that's stuck in our brains of Georgia Carson Beck, right? Or Carson Beck getting bailed out by his wide receivers early in the year in that win against Notre Dame. And we've got it stuck in our heads. And sometimes it's very hard to get rid of these narratives, right? You have a very hard time pushing back against something. You've been out with friends watching a game, maybe hanging out at a buddy's house or at the bar, and you're watching a game and you go, oh my God, Carson Beck threw up all over himself in a big game again. I knew it. That's just what he does. But over the last 5 weeks, Carson Beck hasn't done that. You know, I get it. They haven't faced the defense like Ohio State's. Ohio State's defense is the best in the country. And so this will be the most difficult time for Carson Beck to manage the game. And I know that's a bad word. That's a pejorative when used in reference to any quarterback. Just be a game manager. That's all they need. Have you seen Miami's defense? Have you seen Reuben Bain Jr. absolutely wreck shop and dominate a game? How'd Julian Sayin handle a really good defense a few weeks ago? Wouldn't call it great. So, as long as Carson Beck doesn't make the kind of mistakes that can flip a game in an instant or sink a game, and I know we've seen him do it before, but that was on a team where it felt like he was being asked to go win games at times. Mario Cristobal is not asking Carson Beck to go out and win a game against Ohio State. He's just asking him not to screw up. Turn around and hand it to Mark Fletcher about 20, 25 times. And let's start there. And if we find ourselves in a one-score game late, just like we did in College Station 11 days ago, I think Mario Cristobal is going to feel like he's in a pretty good spot. And if Carson Beck doesn't turn over the football, if you bet Miami plus 9.5, I got a feeling you're going to be in a pretty good spot. I want to be clear. It's not like I'm running out to bet Miami money line. at almost 3-1 at BetMGM. But I do like Miami to make it real sweaty for Ohio State tonight, to make it real uncomfortable, as long as Carson Beck doesn't make those big mistakes. And I don't think he will. I trust in Carson Beck. I can't believe I just said that. Let me swallow hard. I trust Carson Beck? Question mark. I'm Ron Burgundy. I trust Carson Beck to not make those crucial killer mistakes tonight. And I trust Reuben Bain Jr. and the Miami defense to maybe force Julian Sayin into one of those mistakes or two tonight. And that could actually swing this game to the point where Miami could steal a victory. They could shock the world tonight. Coming up, who is headed to the CFP Final Four, aside from the winner of tonight's Ohio State-Miami Cotton Bowl game? And why? We look at all four matchups with Adam Rittenberg of ESPN. He'll give us the answers. Next, here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM, Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on Westwood One Sports.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
in trouble. It's out. Touchdown! Wow! Omar Cooper! Unbelievable! Give him the Heisman Trophy now.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Gus Johnson absolutely losing his mind on Fox on the call of Omar Cooper's touchdown catch in the back of the end zone at Beaver Stadium for the Hoosiers in their huge win over Penn State earlier this year. Now they get ready for Alabama after an extensive layoff. We'll talk about that game as well as Miami, Ohio State, which kicks off just after 7:30 Eastern tonight. Obviously, Oregon, Texas Tech, the closest matchup of these four CFP quarterfinals, and Ole Miss, Georgia tomorrow night. And we've got somebody who's got all the answers for us. Pleased to be joined here on You Better You Bet by Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer for ESPN. Happy New Year, Adam. Thanks for giving us a few minutes today.
You bet. Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I want to start with tonight's game. I've tried to lay out a case here this morning on Westwood One Sports for how Carson Beck can actually be a key to Miami beating Ohio State. Not because I suspect Mario Cristobal will ask him to take over the game, but because he has not made the kind of mistakes over the last 5 weeks that we've built up in our head are a part of Beck's DNA. So my question to you, Adam, would be, can Miami carefully slog their way to a victory over Ohio State tonight the way they did in College Station 11 days ago?
You know, I think they can to a degree, but if Ohio State, which is certainly capable of doing this, say it scores, say, 3 touchdowns, I think Miami is going to have to open things up on offense and maybe hope for a big play on defense or special teams to try to create short fields. Teams have just had a really hard time getting the ball in the end zone against Ohio State this season. You look at Indiana, even though they won the Big Ten championship game, only 1 touchdown, and it came later on in that ball game. Michigan starts off with 3 straight field goal drives, and Ohio State closes the door. It's just a very it's a great defense that thrives in many areas, but certainly in its own end of the field. And that's why I think Miami's going to need some big plays offensively, whether that's from Mark Fletcher or from Tony at receiver, who's been outstanding. And they've got other guys who are capable of that. And Carson Beck's capable of that. But I think to play, ball control and, just try to, matriculate the ball down the field, so to speak, against this defense is probably not the winning approach in the end because, Ohio State's certainly capable of scoring more than it did in the Big Ten title game.
Yeah, and Ohio State's defense, by far the best Miami has faced this year, undoubtedly. On the other side, though, you talk about ball control and maybe getting some big plays on defense. Ruben Bain, obviously, is at the heart of that for Miami. When we talk about Ruben Bain specifically, maybe not necessarily in the context of this game, but be happy if you expound upon him in regards to this game. But Ruben Bain specifically, could he be the first overall pick in April, given the way the top of this class may shake out?
Well, I think he's going to be, if he's not, he's going to hear his name called very soon after that. He's an experienced, explosive, kind of ideal type pass rusher that NFL teams are going to want in that part of the draft. And I think what he's doing, what he's done in the playoffs so far, what he could do tonight against Ohio State, if Miami wins, what he could do going forward is only going to help his stock. He was a guy that, we had on the Heisman radar early on before some of the quarterbacks and Jeremiah Love developed throughout the season. But absolutely, he's the key to this for Miami, along with Hakeem Messidor and some of those other very talented players on the defensive side. And, again, Ohio State, went into that Indiana game having allowed only 6 sacks all season. They've been really good on the offensive line. They give up 5 against Indiana, which is, a very good defensive line, but not one that's going to put, guys at the top of the NFL draft like Miami will. So that's the real chance for Miami, along, like I said, with, something, sudden change, explosive play, special teams touchdown, short field. I think that's going to be their path to victory tonight.
Chris Mack in for Nick Costos here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports. Happy to be joined by Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer for ESPN. You can also catch him on SiriusXM College Sports Radio as well. Let's move over to Oregon and Texas Tech, Adam. How do the Ducks become the first team this year to beat the Red Raiders with Baron Morton available?
Well, I think it starts with putting pressure on Baron Morton, who's been really efficient when healthy. And I know his durability has been a problem throughout his career, but you look at the numbers and they're really impressive this year. And so for Oregon and that defensive front, Tuioti, Uungalale, both tremendous pass rushers. They've got one of the better defensive tackles in college football in Washington, who had a really nice game, at least first half against James Madison. And so I think the key is going to be getting Morton in some less than ideal situations, because one of the things that both of these teams do well, and Texas Tech I don't think gets enough credit for this, is spread the ball around. They're not reliant on one wide receiver. They're not reliant on one running back. And so, if you're Tosh Lupoi and that defensive staff with Dan Lanning, you have to be aware of everyone that can hurt you. You can't just focus your scheme to stop, one or two players. And that's the same with Texas Tech and Sheil Wood going against this Oregon offense. Oregon, uses a lot of different running backs. They've had to use a lot of different wide receivers because of injury, and now they have those injured receivers back other than Evan Stewart. So it's a very interesting matchup with two similarly built teams with not a lot of weaknesses. But, I think for Oregon, it's going to be getting pressure to Baron Morton and not letting him have time to sit back and pick you apart.
Adam, much like we talked about Reuben Bain Jr. in the first of these four matchups for Miami against Ohio State, there's a similarly gifted defensive player, singularly talented defensive player on that side of the ball for Texas Tech and going against Oregon. Why is it that people don't talk about Jacob Rodriguez necessarily the same way they do about Bain when they talk about their futures?
Well, yeah, he's a linebacker, kind of a middle linebacker type. Those guys typically aren't as valued by the NFL as much as the traditional pass rusher, or obviously the quarterback or the cornerback or the receiver. Those are the four positions that just have, typically a lot more value placed on them. But what Jacob's been able to do this season, what he's done it throughout his career, he's an incredibly smart player, obviously can make plays all over the field. His journey is kind of incredible if you think about it. And, he will certainly go down as an iconic Texas Tech player at a program that is typically known for offense and quarterback play and wide receivers and so forth. But in terms of the defensive Mount Rushmore of Lubbock, Texas, Jacob Rodriguez's face is right on it.
For the Rose Bowl tomorrow afternoon, we've got a unique matchup. Adam Rittenberg of ESPN joining us to break down all four of the CFP quarterfinals over the next 24 to 36 hours, giving us some answers to questions we have about those four games here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on You Better You Bet. It's been 25 days, though, Adam, since Indiana has played. How do they avoid the kind of trap last year's top four seeds fell into from sitting around and waiting?
Well, I think the advantage for them, even though it wasn't something that was fun to go through, was the fact that they exited this playoff so early last year. And the talk about did they really belong, and were there other teams that were more worthy of that spot, and were they just a product of a weaker schedule? That was very much on their minds going into the off season. And I just don't see Curt Cignetti, the way he operates, and his staff, many of whom have been around him for years and years, letting this team let down. You're Indiana. You've never been in this position. I was talking with some of the Alabama players about that yesterday. Like, what's it like facing number one Indiana? You're used to facing number one Georgia or Ohio State or one of those pro Clemson. But this is a new experience, and I don't think it's going to lead to Indiana playing poorly. It doesn't mean Alabama can't win. They're absolutely capable of winning. But I'd be really surprised. I think for the most part, Chris, I don't think we're going to see the teams that have been off for a significant period let down. Now, they could lose because they're facing really good opponents. But, last year's playoff was a different seeding system, and you had mismatches with the teams that had played in the first round against the teams that had been, off for a while, like Penn State, Boise State. So I really think Indiana is going to come at it and be ready to go. and then we'll see if they can beat this Alabama team.
Does a loss bring the DeBoer doubters right back out in Tuscaloosa, Adam, or is he safe this offseason?
Here's the thing. I mean, Alabama, I think there's two fan bases in college football that freak out about losses more than any others. And certainly, I'm sure there's other fans that are going to say, wait, we do too. But I think it's Alabama and Ohio State. Like those two places you can't lose ever in their minds. And it's kind of absurd because this is a second-year program coming off of a Nick Saban era that they weren't winning national championships at the end of Nick's tenure, even though they were obviously winning a lot of games. And so this is a flawed Alabama team. This is an Alabama team that I don't think is capable of winning a national championship this season because of those flaws. And so, yeah, I mean, if they lose to Indiana, which, again, they're expected to as a touchdown underdog, there will be a reaction. He's not going anywhere. He's coming back, and he should come back for a third season and hopefully more seasons. Kalen DeBoer is an excellent coach. College football has changed. The super teams that Nick Saban had year in and year out are much harder to compile now, and I think that's healthy for the sport because you have an Indiana and a Texas Tech and Oregon getting in the playoff 2 straight years, and some of these other programs that we're talking about. So it's just a different world for Alabama fans. It's just one that's hard for them to get used to living in.
He's got his finger on the pulse of everything happening in the world of college football, especially with these 8 CFP teams left. Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer for ESPN, with us here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on the Westwood One Sports Network. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today. More important for Ole Miss and Georgia tomorrow night, Adam, and this may sound like a silly question at first, but I think we all know that Georgia has gotten off to slow starts. Ole Miss has gotten off to fast starts, and that it didn't necessarily matter when the two met back in the middle of the season. So more important for Ole Miss and Georgia tomorrow night, Adam, the first quarter or the fourth quarter?
Yeah, it's the fourth quarter, especially with how good Gunnar Stockton has been. He's been the best fourth quarter quarterback in college football this year by a pretty wide margin. So, if you're Ole Miss, you want to get a lead, certainly, but you also have to realize that he's going to come at you if you're in front in that fourth quarter, and you have to find a way to limit his effectiveness and ideally force him into some mistakes. And, Georgia's one of those teams that we talked about the layoff. They probably wanted to keep playing, given how they were playing at the end of the regular season. Having that layoff, especially after a year where they didn't play well in this particular game, following a lull in play is going to be really interesting because Ole Miss, hey, they've done a great job so far handling all the distractions leading up to and following Lane Kiffin's departure to LSU. I think they're going to be locked in and ready to go. And then the questions are more on the Georgia side. And, hey, Trinidad Chambliss and that offense and Lacey, you fall too far behind. Again, it may be harder to catch up like they did in Athens, like you said, in the midseason game.
I know he's applied for a waiver for an extra year of eligibility, but I also have to believe that if he were headed to the NFL this offseason, there are NFL evaluators who are drooling at the idea of Trinidad Chambliss's physical skill set. Where will he be in 2026, Adam?
It's a good question. I still think if he's able to get that waiver, he'll play another year at the college level in the SEC most likely or at a major program. Because, you want to create enough, firm evaluation firm for the NFL to say you are an NFL quarterback. You are a potential franchise quarterback. And he's done a lot this year to show that. But, he's also competing against some quarterbacks that have played at the FBS level, the Power 4 level for multiple seasons, whether that's Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson from Alabama is a guy that I think will come out and go into the draft. Dante Moore of Oregon, even though he doesn't have nearly as many starts as Trinidad Chambliss, he's played his entire career at the Power 4 level. So I would imagine he will play another college season if he can, but what a great story. That's the thing. With all the attention on Lane Kiffin and everything he was going to do going into the coaching cycle, this Ole Miss team has been incredible, and Trinidad Chambliss, coming from where he started his career to where he is now, is just one of the great college football stories of the season.
Adam, before I let you go, we got about 90 seconds for this answer. Is there any way, when they were each in the midst of their moments in the wilderness over the last couple of months, that we would have expected Penn State and Michigan to both end up smelling like roses somehow, despite falling in giant steaming piles of manure in regards to their coaching searches. Penn State ending up with a guy they should have had their eye on in the first place, Matt Campbell, and Michigan somehow landing Kyle Whittingham.
Right. Well, yeah, Penn State, they were in that coaching search for a really long time, but they were locked in on Kalani Sitake, I was told, right up until BYU found out about it and obviously found a way to keep him. And then they pivoted to Matt Campbell. And again, they should have absolutely been on him to begin with. And they ended up with a tremendous coach who I think fits well. Michigan's a different situation, not expecting a coaching change. It's a whole mess there, as you mentioned. And then to come out with Kyle Whittingham, an energized Kyle Whittingham who wants to be there, 3, 4, 5 years. That's certainly a good position for the Wolverines.
Adam, I appreciate your time so much on this New Year's Eve. Enjoy the rest of the CFP. Thanks for making time for us. Happy New Year. We'll talk again soon.
You got it. Happy New Year. Thanks.
Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer for ESPN. As I mentioned, he is plugged into everything happening in college football, especially with these 8 teams still left in the playoff. The one thing that I think we're missing in regards to this year's CFP, in relation to last year's CFP, and sure, a lot of it has to do with the fact that Arizona State and Boise got byes in the top 4, and that structure was changed this year. But just the fact that I think we're going to see, there's a good chance you see all, if not at least 3 of these top 4 seeds survive the quarterfinals. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the narrative of, in Indiana's case, for example, you're Indiana. You haven't been here before. Here's your chance to put a stamp on it. I would say the same goes for a team like Ole Miss, and they're not the top seed in their game, obviously, but I think that motivational narrative of, you ain't supposed to be here. What are you doing here? And then you find yourself there does have a lot to do with what we may see over the next 36 hours in the outcome of these 4 CFP quarterfinal games. I don't hate a look at Ole Miss against Georgia on the money line. I don't. I think Chambliss is just too electric. And if Ole Miss can actually learn from the mistakes of earlier this year, actually get after Gunnar Stockton, force him into some mistakes, that could be another shocking upset that we get. I laid out the case for Miami earlier, even though if I don't think it's likely, they could make it uncomfortable for Ohio State. And Indiana certainly isn't a dog in their matchup against Alabama. But that's a great point Adam made. You're Indiana. You're not supposed to be here. This is your first trip to the Rose Bowl in 60 years? Maybe longer? Maybe it's more like 58. My math is off this morning. Doesn't matter. It's been a whole hell of a long time. And I got to think Kurt Cignetti has his guys tuned up and ready to go with as much motivational material and as much preparation over the last 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, really, is necessary. Coming up next, it is win or go home in a couple of spots in the NFL. What's it like when everything's on the line and you've got to win from that point on out to reach your ultimate goal? We'll talk to a 2-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman who has been in that position before. Trey Essex joins us next here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on Westwood One Sports.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
So we're going to for the Steelers and Ravens, for the Buccaneers and Panthers as well. Maybe not necessarily for the Bucs, because you got the added twist to that NFC South race of the Falcons having an impact. What's it like when you're playing every single game with everything on the line and you haven't even reached the playoffs yet, but your team does get hot and you do go on a run, like some of those other teams we've talked about throughout the day? The Bears, who all of a sudden I feel really good about for some reason. We'll talk to two-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman Trey Essex in just a couple of moments here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on Westwood One Sports, presented by BetMGM, and BetMGM account holders going to receive a college football playoff odds boost token today. Go get it. Use it. Add a wager made up entirely of CFP bets to your bet slip and activate the token. You're going to score extra winnings if your wager that was made with that token wins, all inside your BetMGM app. I've been telling you, 9.5 that Miami's catching. My opinion, too much. I think if Carson Beck manages the game from the quarterback position, Miami's in a good position to not just scare Ohio State, but maybe pull off what would be a stunning upset. I think Ole Miss is in position to maybe upset Georgia tomorrow night. Not quite as confident in Bama to upset Indiana. I think Texas Tech is dogs. I mean, come on. That's come down inside of 3 points most places. So a good chance that if you like Oregon, you don't have to lay a lot. If you like Texas Tech, you're still getting a decent number. Go check everything out inside the BetMGM app and use that token to get yourself a bigger payout once it's activated. In just a moment, we'll have Trey Essex here to talk about the do or die, win or go home nature of the NFL stretch run and the playoffs. Coming up in 20 minutes, I think we've arrived at a quarterback crisis in the NFL, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. I'll explain and let you hear exactly what someone who would know all about that dynamic thinks of it, like I said, in 20 minutes. But happy to be joined by former Pittsburgh Steeler, two-time Super Bowl champion, Northwestern alum. Oh, somebody's fired up about Chip Kelly, I bet. And co-host of Snap Count with former Lions and Steelers quarterback Charlie Batch. Trey Essex with us here on You Better You Bet this morning. Morning, Trey. How are you?
Fantastic, Chris. Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy New Year to you as well, my friend. I'm doing fantastic. I wanted to start with that dynamic. You were a part of a Steelers team that had to win every game down the stretch, had to skate into the playoffs as a wild card, and then win every game on the road, right? And you did it. You pulled it off. The last team to win the Super Bowl as a wild card was that Pittsburgh Steelers team you were a part of years ago. Just how difficult is it, or does it help heighten absolutely everything you're doing and make it feel like as the momentum rolls downhill, you're almost destined to win these games?
I feel like it's twofold. Now, granted, I was a rookie, so I was just doing whatever I was told to do. Coming from Northwestern, where my best year was 6-7, I was just happy to be a part of a team that was winning. But that last stretch when we were 7-5, and I actually was part of that because I started at left tackle. Marvell Smith went down for a few games, so I was at the beginning of that winning streak. We understood that we had no room for error. It kind of makes you kind of singularly focus. Everything becomes clear because you know exactly what you have to do. There's no wiggle room. There's no gray area. You know exactly what you have to do. You know you have to win every single week. And it kind of clears things up for you. And you come into the building with a renewed focus each and every week, knowing, especially with this team, especially since we had Jerome Bettis and we wanted to send him home, we wanted to make sure that we did it the right way. So it was easy in a way because you knew exactly what we had to do, but it was kind of nerve-wracking because you knew a mistake here, a mistake there could cost you the game and then could cost your team the playoffs.
Do you see a team on either side of this year's playoff field right now, Trey, that gives you the feel that they're getting hot at the right time and could parlay that from a wild card spot all the way to a Super Bowl appearance?
A team that looks very similar to how we did in 2005 is the Houston Texans, and they look scary right now. They have a young coach that's fired up, that seems to be having these guys in the right position every single time. They have a defense that's just out of this world, that's just shutting folks down. And then C.J. Stroud seems to have found his mojo again. And when you got a guy like that, and they have weapons in Nico Collins and the Jaden Higgins kid is coming on real fast, and they got Woody Marks is coming on real fast, and that O-line has improved a lot. Houston scares me, and I think they're a team that is destined to make a run here pretty soon.
You talk about C.J. Stroud. This is a guy who came into the league, Trey, and immediately everyone was like, this is that dude. And he's gone through some ups and downs since then. And we heard it at the beginning of the show. I'm going to play it again in about 20 minutes. A comment Troy Aikman had to say on Monday Night Countdown earlier this week about how organizations have failed young quarterbacks more than young quarterbacks have failed organizations that spent high draft capital on them over the last few years. C.J. Stroud, in my opinion, is a great example of a guy who, yes, he came on strong right out of the box, but has also, weathered some storms. And I don't see that same patience in NFL organizations these days. Do you see opportunities for quarterbacks to continue to grow as they ply their trade and grow up in the NFL? Or have we reached a point where NFL organizations just don't have the time for that anymore? And if you can't go right from the start, then you're just out of luck.
Yeah, I think everything is cyclical. I do agree with Troy. These organizations have failed quarterbacks more so than quarterbacks have failed organizations. And it's the nature of the business now. Everybody wants to win now. What have you done for me lately? And coaches are nervous about their jobs. GMs are doing everything they can to keep their jobs. And everybody feels like they're on this three-year lease, and they have to get a quarterback going in that time frame. And so it's tough. I think teams are, because of that, relying more on the run game. You see the run game picking up much more and people going back to a power-type offenses. You see fullbacks being implemented more in offenses, and I think that's all because people aren't taking the time to develop the quarterback position like they should be, and they don't have the patience. You see what's happening in Indianapolis in their quarterback carousel, and Anthony Richardson, who they thought had the potential to be somebody, even though he hadn't really proved it in college. They didn't have the patience to develop him, even though he was a project and drafted in the top 10. So it does give you a sense of panic at the quarterback position, because that is what the NFL prides themselves on. That's what they highlight when they promote the NFL, is the quarterback position. And they're just having a tough time developing these quarterbacks. And it's because the coaching is not there consistently enough. And even when you look at C.J. Stroud, he went through his trials and tribulations, but I think he lost his OC in his second year. He had his OC. I forgot his name, but he was there his rookie year. He lost in the second year, and you saw he lost him. And then he got him back in the third year. It took him a while to get going, but now you see that he's finally hit his stride and that Houston is responding accordingly.
Two-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman, Northwestern alum, and host of the Snap Count podcast with Charlie Batch, Trey Essex, with us here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on Westwood One Sports. I made the argument earlier, Trey, that I think the Trayvon Diggs release by the Dallas Cowboys is a great example of how you can be the best play caller in the world, the best OC or DC. It really is a leap to becoming a head coach who can also learn how to deal with the idiosyncrasies of different personalities and learn how to manage men. I think there are some coaches out there who have jumped out in that regard. Ben Johnson in Chicago, I think, is a great example, how he's managed Caleb Williams since taking over the Bears role. But just, can you feel that in the room, I guess, when you're a player? Can you feel whether a coach is actually able to relate to you as men and players and handle that side as well as they may handle the schematic X's and O's side?
Most definitely. You know right away when a coach isn't comfortable in his own skin leading men. And so the first thing that you see as a player in your head coach is, does he demand respect? Is he consistent? Is he persistent in who he is and the message that he's delivering to you? And you feel it right away if it's not. And if he waffles and if he goes with the flow of things as opposed to having a direct plan that he wants everybody to follow. And so Coach Tomlin, I've had two of them, and Coach Kyler and Coach Tomlin, that knew exactly how they wanted the team to look, where they wanted the team to go, and how they wanted to manage the pieces around it to reach the goal together. And you go into a room and you have a coach like that demands that type of respect, it's easy to fall in line and follow that guy. And that's also been an issue in the NFL. There's not a lot of leaders of men in the NFL. You got these coaches that are bright minds that know how to call plays, know the X's and O's of things, but do they know personalities? Can they mesh these different personalities from different social economic backgrounds and different just histories and whatnot and bring them all together, singularly focused to accomplish a goal? And oftentimes you don't see that happening.
You mentioned Mike Tomlin. You played for him. There is a lot of chatter in Pittsburgh, as there has been over the last month, really over the last few years. Steelers fans have a very high standard. They want to see contention for Super Bowl titles. Would you be shocked? Now, the Steelers are never going to fire Mike Tomlin. You and I both know that. I think most people that know anything about the Pittsburgh Steelers know that when Mike Tomlin goes out, it will be his decision. Would you be surprised if a loss Sunday night pushed Coach Tomlin to make that decision on his own and say, you know what, maybe it is time for a fresh start somewhere else?
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's kind of, I think, trending in that direction. I think it's starting to wear on him, the pressure, not the pressure per se, but just he hears the noise. And honestly, he has to look at his own resume the last 5 years and take a look in the mirror and see that he's not getting this team over the hump anymore. If they lose, if that's the case, hopefully it's not the case. Obviously, I'm still rooting for my team, and I hope they pull this out. It's going to be a heck of a game. I'm already nervous, Chris, about it already. It's only Wednesday. But, I could see him and Mr. Rooney coming to a mutual agreement that maybe it's best to go our separate ways if that's the case on Sunday. Last year in the playoffs, the way we lost with Derrick Henry running roughshed on us all game, and it's looking like that Baltimore is going to try to do that same thing again. If that same thing happens, because our Rooney has been a proponent of stopping the run. That's why we drafted Derrick Harmon in the first round, and we paid this defense as much money as we paid them. If we go out the way that we went out last year, I could see them coming to an agreement and going separate ways.
What do you think the future holds for Aaron Rodgers? Could you see him heading back to Pittsburgh? Obviously, I think a lot would have to do with Mike Tomlin's future. But if Mike Tomlin were to return, could you see Aaron Rodgers coming back for another year as the Steelers quarterback, especially given the fact that the quarterback class, you look at the free agent class, it's really weak. You look at the draft class, it's not particularly strong. The Steelers and Aaron Rodgers might look at each other as their best options for at least one more stopgap year.
I think the Steelers, no matter what, want Aaron Rodgers to come back. Do I think Aaron Rodgers wants to come back? Nobody ever knows what's on that man's mind. I think if we win a game, it might make him lean towards that. And obviously, Tomlin would need to be there. I mean, winning a playoff game. But, yeah, nobody ever knows what he's thinking. He is a unique personality and intellect. And so he came into this year saying that this could possibly be his last year. And he hasn't deviated or said anything otherwise to make you think that he will be coming back. So I think it's all based on if we get to the playoffs and have a long run. And even still, it might be his swan song if we do have a long run, and he might want to end on a high note. So it really could go either way.
Two-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Trey Essex, with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Before I let you run, Trey, I got to ask, you got to be fired up. You guys got an OC at Northwestern.
Oh, yeah.
Felt like things were trending in the right direction. A lot of steam picking up towards the end of the year. And you got a new building to move into finally. And now you got yourselves an offensive wizard, even though it didn't look that way with the Raiders.
Chris, it's a great day to be a Wildcat. And I know one team's trash is another team's treasurer. But we're only a year removed from Chip Kelly taking another Big Ten team to the national championship. He won a national championship calling plays for Will Howard. And so if we get that Chip Kelly, then we're winning right there. And I think Chip Kelly knows. And when you don't.
Oh, I think we lost Trey. Right? Is the excitement levels for the Chip Kelly hire as Northwestern offensive coordinator may have just completely tripped the connection. Hold on. I think we still got Trey on the line. Let's see if we can pull him back up. Trey, you still there?
Yep, I'm sorry. Yeah, can you hear me? I'm
You're
on the
good.
road.
Your energy.
And,
I was telling people your energy levels over Chip Kelly kind of tripped the line there for a second. There was just so much going on.
Yeah, I'm excited. And this is probably, and I'm not even like, this is probably our biggest hire since Eric Parsegan back in like the 30s, who went on, and he wasn't known like the Eric Parsegan that everybody knows that went to Michigan. He started at Northwestern, but this is a huge hire for Northwestern. Chip Kelly, I think, knows now that he doesn't want to be a head coach. I don't even think he wants to be in the NFL anymore. I think he knows his place is as an OC in college. That's where he's had the most success. And Northwestern's definitely going to reap the benefits. I think we're going to get recruiting to pick up a lot. That new stadium, Chris, when I tell you that thing is going to be amazing, it is going to be off the chain. We already got a new complex on the lake. We had the makeshift field that Northwestern put a lot of money into while they're building the new stadium, and now it's opening up next year, and we got this OC. We're going to be the toast of the town for at least 2 weeks, hopefully when the college season starts next year. And, I'm excited. Wildcats are excited. I think this is the right direction. Coach Braun has done an amazing job considering what he had to come into with Coach Fitz and all that controversy 3 years ago. The job just got plopped into his lap, and he's ran with it and done an amazing job with it. And now this is a big move for him, bringing in Chip Kelly. Things are going great for the Purple, man. I'm excited.
I'm excited for you, man. It would be great to have Northwestern get into the conversation at the top, or at least the second tier of the Big Ten, and maybe be that next Indiana. Who knows? Trey, thank you so much for the time, my friend. It was great catching up with you. Happy New Year, and we'll talk again soon.
Happy New Year, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Two-time Super Bowl champ Trey Essex joining us here to talk NFL, and of course his Northwestern Wildcats. I was texting with Trey yesterday about the Chip Kelly move, and what you heard on the air just there, just a fraction of his level of excitement. He is fired up. He thinks Northwestern could take a huge jump with Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator. As long as Geno Smith isn't the quarterback, I think they got a chance, or Kenny Pickett, and I don't think that's possible. What if guys with college eligibility could leave the NFL and go back to college football? Not only would John Calipari lose his mind, but that would be a wild scenario. Don't ask for it. Somebody will cook it up and find a way to make it happen. I did think that it was interesting that Trey, who played for Mike Tomlin, granted it was a little while ago, but he played for Mike Tomlin and still is intimately close with the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. When I asked him if a loss Sunday night could push Mike Tomlin towards making the decision to walk away from the Pittsburgh Steelers and go look for a fresh start elsewhere in a sort of mutual parting of ways, a conscious uncoupling, as it were, he said, no, that wouldn't surprise him at all, which is wild to think about, that a team who believes in consistency and steadiness and staying the course more than anything else could be considering a head coaching change, which is, again, only happened 3 times in the last 56 years. That would be massive. But I still believe that it really is win or go home for both of those head coaches Sunday night, Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, not just in so much as, oh, yeah, their season is over, they got to go home, but it may mean the end of a long line of what other fans in other NFL markets would look at as wild success. But these two fan bases in Pittsburgh and Baltimore look at as becoming stale and not meeting expectations over the last decade plus. Again, Ravens haven't been to a Super Bowl in 13 years, I believe it is. Steelers haven't been in 15 years. It's been a while. And so both of these coaches feel like they may be meeting an expiration date in their respective cities, and that Sunday night could go a long way to determining their future. Coming up next here on You Better You Bet, Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on Westwood One Sports. We have, I am convinced, arrived at a quarterback crisis in the NFL. You heard me ask Trey about this just a couple minutes ago. I'll let you hear what a Hall of Famer had to say about it the other night, because it's not getting better anytime soon. That's next here on Westwood One Sports.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today on You Better You Bet. Before we wrap up the show in about a half hour, the 3 stars of the day. And I will bring it back in a way that for old-timey hockey fans will remind you of something that I don't want to get too old here, but that I feel like you younger generation should really learn to respect. I'll explain it all before we wrap up. Plus, this weekend in hindsight, I know it's not necessarily a Friday, but it kind of feels like a Friday, but it's sort of like a nameless gray day like any other between Christmas and New Year's. It's New Year's Eve. Happy 2026. We'll ring it in about 12 hours on the East Coast, 15 hours on the West Coast. And we appreciate you joining us across North America on Channel 375, Westwood One Sports on Sirius XM. But we're going to take a spin into the future. I will come back. I will tell you exactly what's happened over the next few days by virtue of an old DeLorean that I found at a used car lot here near my house, and an old crazy scientist who put something called a flux capacitor in it. And I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen over the next couple of days, this weekend in hindsight, coming up before we wrap up the show as well. But I told you that we have reached a quarterback crisis in the NFL. And I really believe that. And it's not getting better anytime soon. And a Hall of Famer absolutely agrees. Here's what he had to say.
I think there's been a lot of quarterbacks that have been drafted high who have left the game and have been labeled a bust. And I think it's unfair because I do feel that organizations and coaching has failed quarterbacks more than quarterbacks have failed organizations.
Troy Aikman on ESPN's Monday Night Countdown this past Monday in Atlanta, where the Falcons upset the Rams. And he's completely right. We've completely screwed up. Both as fans, it's partially our fault too, because we guide the teams that we love, the organizations that we cheer for, the laundry that we root for towards these decisions in some cases with our fanaticism. But we have completely screwed up the dynamics and expectations for young quarterbacks in the NFL. We really have. You know, I said it this year before the draft about Jackson Dart. I said, I really like Jackson Dart. I do. I think he could be a very good NFL quarterback. But he's going to it's going to take some time. I think he needs time to sit and watch and learn. Give him a redshirt year, as it were, at the NFL level. Especially once they got 2 veteran quarterbacks ahead of him on the depth chart. There was no reason for the Giants to suddenly pivot away from Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Other than the fact that they stunk. I get it. Neither one of them is very good. I get it. But you're the Giants. Did you think you were going to win this year? Then why else would you get away from one of the 2 veteran quarterbacks that you brought in as a stopgap? Because you wanted to get a look at Jackson Dart, right? Let's see him in game action, see what he could do. And then he made some plays. And then all of a sudden you're like, here we go. We got to see more of this kid. He's electric. And he can be electric at times. This isn't to bag on Jackson Dart. But you've started the clock now when you didn't have to. You didn't. We do this with young quarterbacks everywhere. I said it a couple years ago when J.J. McCarthy came out and was taken in the top half of the first round by the Vikings. I may have been a little harsh in my criticism, calling him Kenny Pickett 2.0. You look at the results for the better part of when he's played this season, and it's hard to argue against. He's just not ready for the NFL yet. And it's okay to draft a quarterback, even in the first round, and then let him grow and develop. Especially if you're one of these teams that is drafting in the top 10. You're probably not anywhere close to turning things around in 1 year anyway. Again, I'm looking at you, Giants. Looking at you, Raiders. Looking at you, Browns. Yeah, they could draft another quarterback this year, and I don't think it would surprise some folks in Cleveland. Because they've mismanaged the position. It's the most important position in sports. Quarterback at the NFL level. And when you mismanage it by trying to throw a guy into the fire too early and heaping too many expectations on him, you completely ruin the dynamic. Again, I will make a reference that is, 55 years old. I'm not that old, but certainly growing up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I heard from plenty of people in my family, uncles, older cousins, people who told me all about how terrible Terry Bradshaw was when he came into the league. And he was bad. It took time for him to figure it out. Nearly lost his job a couple of times. And yet, when he finally got it, he got it in a big way. And you could even argue that he still wasn't totally getting it for the first of the Pittsburgh Steelers' 4 titles in the 1970s, that it was driven more by defense and running the football. And I realize I'm talking about something that's literally a half century ago, but I still think it's applicable today. By the time the Steelers got around to their 3rd and 4th Super Bowl titles in the late 1970s, Bradshaw was elite. It took 6, 7, 8 years before Bradshaw fully realized his potential. And we're so spoiled by seeing guys come into the league in some cases and immediately play well that we don't take into account that that's not normally the way it goes. Look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was atrocious his first year in the NFL, and he'll tell you as much. It took time for Peyton Manning to find himself as an NFL quarterback. You can't just immediately throw guys in there and assume that they're going to be able to take you from doormat to contender. And organizations will tell you, well, we brought in this great young offensive assistant. We got a quarterback's coach. We got an assistant quarterback's coach. It takes time. You can have the best infrastructure in the world around a young quarterback. You could get all the talent at the offensive skill positions in line. You could get all the assistant head coaching architecture in place. And everything could even go well in their rookie year. Again, we'll reference C.J. Stroud, who I talked about earlier with Trey Essex. You can reference Jaden Daniels, right? And you go, man, there it is. We got our instant impact guy. And then maybe they stumble a bit because every young quarterback needs to have moments of growth. They do. Even if it's off the field. I'll reference again a Pittsburgh Steeler, Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger came in. His offensive linemen were ticked off that a rookie quarterback was being thrown into the fire. And then he ripped off like 15 wins. Went to an AFC championship game. Won a Super Bowl his second year. But then there was growth. Off the field as well as on the field. Even the quarterbacks that come in and have immediate positive impact still need to learn from mistakes and grow. And we don't give time for that anymore. We see some level of success early in their careers, especially in their rookie seasons. And we say, all right, he's there. He's ready to go. Not accounting for the fact that there will be future growing pains. Or we see a guy come in and have growing pains right from the jump. And we go, this guy isn't NFL ready. You got to give him more time. Especially because, have you seen what the other options are out there? Have you looked at the list of free agent quarterbacks this offseason? Oh, baby. It is not good. And have you looked at what's available in the draft? I mean, Mendoza and Dante Moore are probably going to get overdrafted by a full round. Let's be honest. Back in the day, those are second-round quarterbacks. But you have to get your quarterback early now. I like Fernando Mendoza. I like Dante Moore. Neither one of those guys is walking in and becoming an instant impact starter from day one in the NFL. They're going to take time. And they're going to get overdrafted. And the expectations will be too high because of it. But teams will do that because they believe if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. And that's part of the crisis that we have created at the quarterback position in the NFL. The free agent class is awful. Daniel Jones, who won't be able to play most of the next season. Aaron Rodgers, who will be turning 43 next December. Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, Zach Wilson, Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mitch Trubisky. The pitch on my voice gets higher with each name that I mention because I'm in more disbelief that somebody would actually want to bring these guys in. Trey Lance, although he's starting this weekend, right? Case Keenum. I didn't forget Malik Willis, Kenny. Malik Willis, probably a future Pittsburgh Steeler you guys are joking about. Yeah. He might actually be the best of the free agent class. But that's case in point. There's not a lot of options out there. Find a young guy that you like, give him time to develop, and then wait for the harvest of your efforts to produce some fruit. That was a really weird analogy. I'm not into gardening. My wife makes me set up a garden in the backyard every spring, and I get really annoyed about a month later when all the deer come by and eat all the tomatoes off the plant. It's very annoying. I have no idea where that analogy came from. Not being into gardening. Anyway, coming up, we are going to fast forward through your New Year's hangover and then some. I will tell you exactly how things are going to play out in the next couple of days with this weekend in hindsight, plus the 3 stars of the day. All next here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on Westwood One Sports.
We'll be right back with You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
3 stars of the day in just a moment to wrap up the show here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on Westwood One Sports. We are presented by BetMGM, and man, are there some massive games to bet on. We've talked about all 4 of the CFP quarterfinals, and right now, BetMGM account holders, you can get a college football playoffs odds boost token to use it. All you got to do, log into your BetMGM app, add a wager made up entirely of college football playoff bets to your bet slip, and then activate the token, and you could score extra winnings if your wager that was made with the token wins, all inside your BetMGM app just in time for the CFP, which, of course, the quarterfinal round gets started tonight in Arlington, Cotton Bowl between the Miami Hurricanes and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Before we get to the 3 stars of the day, I will prepare you for what is to happen with this weekend in hindsight, where I borrow my Uncle Marty's DeLorean and travel ahead just a few days and bring you not predictions, my friends, not predictions about what will happen over the next few days, but I will tell you exactly what happened and how it went down. I was there. I was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened. What is, by the way, I know the Venn diagram of Westwood One Sports listeners and viewers with Stranger Things viewers. Very little overlap between those 2 circles, right? We established that earlier today. What do you think the Venn diagram is of Westwood One listeners and people who have seen Hamilton? Because I hate musicals. I'll just be straight up with you. I despise musicals. Okay? But that is the one I love. I don't know if it's because of the hip hop vibe. I don't know. But I love it. My kids, when it came out on Disney Plus a few years ago, watched it repeatedly over and over and over again. I mean, it was just, and so much of it is now stuck in my head. We took them to an off-Broadway version of it when it came to Pittsburgh, where we live. And it was just, I love Hamilton, despite being a guy that hates musicals. So I think there's probably a little bit more overlap between Hamilton and Westwood One Sports listeners than there is between Stranger Things and Westwood One Sports listeners. But I got to believe there's more than a few of you who are in the same boat with me out there. And thank you for joining us here on the final day of 2025 as we get ready to flip the calendar into 2026. It's going to be an amazing year here on Westwood One Sports, and we're truly grateful that you are along for the ride. I just wanted to get that out of the way before I wrap the show up. I appreciate every single one of you that is listening or watching, wherever you may be doing so, as you get ready to ring in the new year, hopefully with family and friends, hopefully safely. And if it's, a little wilder than maybe you were prepared for, I'll tell you exactly what you'll wake up to with this weekend in hindsight. First, a couple quick notes from the NFL. Has been reported that Jalen Hurts will not be playing for the Eagles this weekend, as they're essentially locked into the 3 seed, right? Like, they could beat Washington and Chicago could lose to Detroit. Yeah, that's a possibility. But there's no greater advantage, I don't think, between 2 and 3 in the NFC. You're probably playing the Rams or the Packers, either way, right? So Jalen Hurts not going to play. Tanner McKee will most likely get the start for the Eagles this weekend. Speaking of backup quarterbacks, we mentioned Malik Willis a couple minutes ago. He's still dealing with the effects of an injury. And, of course, Jordan Love still in concussion protocol. So the Packers have signed Desmond Ridder to the practice squad. Okay. I guess get comfortable with the 7 seed in Green Bay and a potential third meeting with the Bears in the super wild card round of the NFL playoffs. All right, let us go into the future. I've actually already been there. I brought back the results with me to tell you what exactly went down with this weekend in hindsight. And just be prepared. These are not predictions. This is what happened. So Ohio State won ugly against Miami on a walk-off field goal, 17-14. So my trust in Carson Beck may have been a bit misplaced. A Jacob Rodriguez forced fumble, scoop and score paved the way for Texas Tech's 24-20 win over Oregon on New Year's Day in the Orange Bowl. Ty Simpson unfortunately melted down Bama fans against Indiana's defense through 2 picks. Cignetti had his guys ready after the long layoff. The Hoosiers handled Bama 27-17. Trinidad Chambliss had a massive first half against Georgia, ran for 2 touchdowns, threw 2 more, but again, the story was the same for Ole Miss. They couldn't hold on to a big lead in the second half. They were up 28-10, but Georgia stormed back to win 38-31. Sound familiar? And move on to the CFP semifinals. As for the big games in the NFL that mattered, Darnold, he sammed all over himself, and the Niners beat Seattle 29-27 to win the NFC West title and the 1 seed. Derrick Henry carried 25 times for 124 yards. The Ravens beat the Steelers 21-13, despite Lamar turning the ball over twice early and then leaving the game in Tyler Huntley's hands. And Baker and the Bucs beat Carolina, but it didn't matter because Tyler Shuck threw a pair of picks and the Falcons beat New Orleans. So the Panthers won the NFC South and moved into the 4 seed in the NFC. There you go. Now you know exactly how it's going to go down. Go out and have a good time. All right, the 3 best moments of the show. It's time to give you the 3 stars of the day.
3.
You keep the MVP caliber quarterback in Lamar Jackson, or you stick with the 60-something-year-old head coach who's been around for 2 decades. I don't know about you. My choice would be simple in that case. I'd choose the quarterback. We talked a lot about the impact of the Steelers-Ravens game on Sunday night for both head coaches. In particular, the impact on John Harbaugh could be he's on his way out. Could be for Tomlin as well, but Harbaugh may have a little more force behind his rear end on the way out the door, because it sounds like he and Lamar may not be on the same page these days. And as I said earlier, you heard it there, I think if the Ravens push comes to shove, they'll choose the franchise quarterback over the head coach who has not met expectations over the past decade or so. Your number 3 star of the day, myself. Yeah, I can do that if I want to. Brass Bonanza, by the way, is the name of the song. The old Hartford Whalers song. It's perfect for 3 stars of the day. I just picture the Charlestown Chiefs skating out and starting a line brawl before the anthem. All right, next, the number 2 star.
2.
I just don't see Curt Cignetti, the way he operates, and his staff, many of whom have been around him for years and years, letting this team let down. I mean, you're Indiana. You've never been in this position.
Adam Rittenberg of ESPN joined us earlier. I think that's a great point. We're all ready for the top 4 seeds to have some sort of letdown in some way because they've had such a long layoff here in the CFP. In some cases, not playing in 3.5 weeks. If there's one team I don't expect that to happen to, it's definitely Indiana. I think Cignetti's going to get him out there, get him fired up, and I told you in this weekend in hindsight, get after Ty Simpson early, make some plays on defense that start the ball rolling downhill. Wouldn't be surprised to see all 4 of the top 4 seeds win and advance in the CFP over the next 36 hours. And our number 1 star of the day.
1.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's kind of, I think, trending in that direction. I think it's starting to wear on him, the pressure, not the pressure per se, but just he hears the noise. And honestly, he has to look at his own resume the last 5 years and take a look in the mirror and see that he's not getting this team over the hump anymore.
That's 2-time Super Bowl champion offensive lineman who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Trey Essex, who was on with us less than an hour ago talking about, no, he wouldn't be surprised if a loss Sunday night causes Mike Tomlin to take some reflection, look in the mirror, and say, you know what? Maybe it's time for a fresh start somewhere else. So Trey Essex, our number 1 star of the day. Adam Rittenberg, our number 2 star of the day. And yeah, because I can do it, I'm patting myself on the back as the number 3 star of the day. Clearly, the biggest storylines over the next few days are going to come from the college football playoff as we lead into the weekend and Week 18. And as I mentioned, some massive results that will decide what the playoff field looks like. And from there, Super Wild Card Weekend, now just, 10 days away. It's all right. You know, we're lucky enough to have a pretty awesome sports calendar this time of year. So sit back, relax, enjoy it. Make sure you're taking us with you wherever you go. Thanks to everybody, Mike, Kenny, Dan, Tyler, for helping me sit in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Keep it locked here, the Westwood One Sports Network. I'm Chris Mack. I'll talk to you again soon.
That was You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.